When someone you like starts pulling away, most people do the same thing. They panic, overthink, and start chasing. You reread old messages, craft long paragraphs explaining how you feel, watch the typing bubble vanish, and feel your stomach drop when her replies get shorter, slower, and colder. Deep down you know that chasing is making things worse, but the silence feels unbearable, so you keep pushing. By the time you realize what happened, your frame is gone, your self-respect feels damaged, and she feels more pressure than connection. Today we're going to build a different response. A Stoic response. Not a trick to manipulate her back into your life, but a grounded way to handle distance, whether things work out with her or not. You'll learn how to create a stillness window so you're not reacting from anxiety, how to send one respectful re-invite instead of a flood of insecure messages, and how to build a self-care replacement plan so your life doesn't collapse into waiting by your phone. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, or legal advice. The core idea is simple: when interest drops, your value does not. Her behavior might change, but who you are, what you're building, and how you carry yourself can remain steady. Stoic thinkers like Marcus and Seneca spent a lot of time talking about what is in your control and what is not. You cannot control whether she texts, calls, or wants to see you. You can fully control how you respond, how you schedule your time, how you talk to yourself, and how quickly you hand your power away. So here's how we'll move through this lesson. First, you'll learn why immediate chasing after distance almost always backfires and what to do instead in the first 24 to 72 hours. Next, we'll build a grounded inner frame so her behavior doesn't rewrite your sense of worth. Then, you'll get one clean, respectful message you can send when it's time to reopen the door. After that, you'll see how to respect space and handle mixed signals without resentment or begging. Finally, we'll put together a daily self-care and focus plan so that, whether she comes closer or walks away, you stay centered, productive, and calm. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. When she starts pulling away, your first move is not to send a message. Your first move is to create a stillness window. No chasing, no long explanations, no "what did I do wrong" texts for a specific period of time. This matters because the moment you feel rejected, your nervous system wants relief. Chasing is your attempt to get quick reassurance. Instead, you're going to let the anxiety rise and fall without acting on it. That's your first act of emotional strength. This works because urgency and clarity do not live in the same room. When you're panicking, your brain exaggerates the threat, edits out nuance, and pushes you toward dramatic fixes. By setting a stillness window, say 48 or 72 hours where you do not initiate, you give your body time to settle. You respect that she might be dealing with her own life, and you protect yourself from sending messages you'll regret later. As Marcus notes in Meditations 5.20, the mind can step back and observe before it reacts. Here's the simple line you can use with yourself the moment you notice her pulling away: I don't respond to fear, I respond from calm. You're not texting this to her. You're saying it internally whenever you feel the urge to reach for your phone, scroll through old chats, or type out a long emotional paragraph. It's a reminder that your first responsibility is to your own steadiness, not to fixing someone else's silence. Picture this happening somewhere in North America. You're in Seattle, you've been seeing someone for a couple of months, and conversations are flowing. Suddenly her replies shift from paragraphs to one-word answers. She takes 8 hours to respond to a simple "how's your day," and then she forgets to ask about yours. Old you would start stacking texts: is everything okay? Did I do something? You seem distant. New you notices the shift, feels the sting, and quietly starts a 72-hour stillness window. You go to work, hit the gym, keep your plans with friends, and you let the discomfort move through you without feeding it with more digital chasing. Your tiny action today is to decide your default stillness window and write it down. It might be 24, 48, or 72 hours, but choose one and commit that when you feel her pulling away, your first move will be to honor that window instead of scrambling for reassurance. Once the initial panic is managed with a stillness window, the next shift is internal. You have to reclaim your frame. The claim here is straightforward. You stop letting her level of interest define your value, and you start measuring yourself by your own standards: how you show up, what you're building, and how you treat people. This matters because when your sense of worth hangs on any one person's attention, you can be pulled around like a kite in the wind. This works on a psychological level because people naturally relax around those who are self-sourced. When you're grounded in your own life, you are less reactive, less needy, and more authentic. Seneca tells Lucilius to value himself at a high price. That means you don't put yourself on clearance the moment one person seems uncertain. When your frame is "I'm a work in progress, but I like who I'm becoming," you stop auditioning and start relating. Here's one line you can quietly use with yourself when you feel your frame slipping: "Her interest can rise or fall, my standard stays the same." Again, this is not a text you send. It's a mental anchor. You say it while brushing your teeth, commuting, or sitting at your desk. It pulls your attention away from "what does she think of me right this second," and back toward "what kind of man or woman am I choosing to be today?" Imagine a guy in Toronto who has been dating someone for 6 weeks. Things felt promising, then she canceled 2 dates in a row with vague excuses. He starts wondering if she found someone else, if he's not attractive enough, if he said something wrong. In the past, he might have tried to buy his way back into her interest: bigger dinner plans, more compliments, constant availability. This time, he pauses and checks in with his frame. He asks himself if he's living up to his own standards, taking care of his body, staying on top of work, treating people with respect. He realizes that regardless of what she does, these are still his responsibility. That realization doesn't erase the sting, but it prevents him from offering more and more for less and less in return. Your tiny action today is to define 3 standards for yourself that have nothing to do with any one person's interest. For example, I keep my word, I move my body at least 3 times a week, I don't chase unclear energy. Write them somewhere visible. They're your frame, and they stay in place whether someone pulls closer or drifts away. After your stillness window and frame reset, if you decide you still want to reopen the connection, you do it with one clean, respectful message, not a flood. The claim here is simple. You send a short, pressure-free check-in that gives her space to step forward without feeling cornered. This matters because long emotional texts often come from a place of wanting to control the outcome. A short, calm message communicates that you're interested, not desperate. This approach works because it shifts the interaction from pursuit to invitation. You are not demanding explanations or status updates. You're offering an open door and watching what she does with it. From a behavior standpoint, people tend to show you their priorities over time. A clear, low-pressure message creates a moment of truth. If she wants to move closer, she can. If she doesn't, that silence is its own answer. As Epictetus reminds you in the Enchiridion, don't chase what isn't up to you. Here's the one line you can adapt to your style when it's time to reach out: "Hey, I've noticed our chats have been quieter lately. I've enjoyed getting to know you. If you're still interested, I'm up for meeting again sometime next week." That's it. No speeches, no guilt trips, no detective work. You're not asking, "Did I do something wrong?" You're simply stating reality, affirming your interest, and suggesting a concrete next step. Picture someone in Chicago using this. He met a woman through friends, they went on a couple of fun dates, but lately her replies have slowed. He honored a 48-hour stillness window, stayed busy with work and hobbies, and checked in with his own standards. He decides he'd genuinely like to see her again. Instead of writing a long message about being confused by her distance, he sends the simple line above on a Thursday afternoon. She now has room to respond honestly. Maybe she replies, "I appreciate you saying that, but I've got a lot going on and don't think I can date right now." Maybe she says, "You're right, I'd been distracted. I'd like to see you Tuesday." Either way, his dignity is intact. Your tiny action today is to write your version of that message in the Notes app on your phone. Adjust the wording so it sounds like you, but keep it short, calm, and focused on an invitation, not interrogation. That way, if you ever need it, you're not drafting from panic, you're simply pressing send on a pre-decided, grounded line. Now comes the hard part for a lot of people: respecting space after you've sent your one clean message. The claim here is that once you've been invited, you stop trying to manage the response. You don't double text, ask if she got your message, or start posting things just to trigger a reaction. This matters because every extra move you make from anxiety chips away at your self-respect and increases pressure on the other person. This works because trust and attraction are allergic to control. When you keep poking at the situation, even with nice or sweet messages, you're essentially saying, I can't sit with uncertainty, so I need you to fix it for me. That's heavy. When you respect space, you demonstrate emotional maturity. You can handle not knowing. You can let other people make their choices without hovering. Often, that alone changes the entire tone of the interaction, whether she comes back or not. Here's the line you keep in mind after you press send: I've said enough, now I watch what happens. This is a private sentence, a mental reminder that your part is done. If she replies, you can engage. If she doesn't, you receive that information without trying to spin it into something else. You're not punishing her with silence, you're simply not chasing clarity harder than she is willing to offer it. Imagine a woman in Denver who has been seeing someone she met on an app. She notices he's become inconsistent, enthusiastic one week, distant the next. She observes a stillness window, checks her own frame, and sends a respectful message similar to the one we crafted earlier. Then she does something new: she waits. She doesn't check his Instagram stories, doesn't DM his friends, doesn't send, or did you see this, memes to keep the thread alive. She gives him room to either step up or fade out. A few days later, his response was lukewarm and vague. Instead of pressing for more, she quietly accepts the answer and lets the connection dissolve. Your tiny action today is to decide what no chasing after the invite means in practice. Maybe it's no double texting within 7 days, or no checking their social media after I've reached out. Whatever feels realistic, write it down as a boundary you hold with yourself, not a rule you hold over them. Even as you handle the outer situation with stillness, one message, and space, you also need a self-care replacement plan. The claim here is that you stop leaving empty time blocks for overthinking and instead preload your schedule with activities that support your health, growth, and relationships beyond romance. This matters because when someone pulls away, you can unconsciously clear your calendar just in case they text. That creates more space for anxiety and less for life. This approach works because emotions follow attention and action. If the only thing on your evening agenda is watching your phone, your mind will obsess over the unanswered text. But if you have a workout, a call with a friend, a personal project, or even a solo movie night planned, your nervous system has other places to land. Stoic practice isn't just about thoughts, it's about what you do with your hours. When your time is structured around what makes you stronger, one person's distance hurts less. Here's a line you can use with yourself when you're tempted to keep your schedule open just in case: I don't reserve my life for maybe. You say this when you're about to decline plans for no reason, when you find yourself scrolling instead of going for a walk, or when you consider canceling your own commitments to be more available. It's a reminder that your life is worth filling with things that matter, regardless of who is texting you. Consider someone in Dallas who feels a crush pulling away. Instead of spending Friday night refreshing messages, he decides ahead of time that Fridays are for his own growth. He books a strength training session at a local gym, schedules a video call with his cousin in another state, and sets aside an hour to work on a side business idea. Does he still think about her? Yes. Does it dominate every minute of his night? No. His body is moving, his relationships are broad, and his future is getting small deposits of effort. The distance still stings, but it no longer defines the entire week. Your tiny action today is to design a simple, repeatable distance routine for the next time someone pulls away. It might be one physical activity, one social connection, and one personal project each day for 3 days. Write down exactly what those could be so you're not negotiating with your emotions at the moment. Even with a schedule and a solid frame, your mind will still want to run stories. She must have met someone else. I knew I wasn't enough. If I had just done X, she wouldn't be pulling away. The claim here is that you learn to separate facts from narratives and talk to yourself the way a level-headed friend would. This matters because the story you tell about her distance can wound you far more deeply than the distance itself. This works because cognitive distance reduces emotional intensity. When you consciously name the facts: we went on 3 dates, her text slowed down over 2 weeks, I sent one calm message and haven't heard back, you give your brain a stable floor to stand on. Then you can notice the story layer: she probably thinks I'm boring, everyone leaves me, I ruined it. Stoic writers constantly practiced examining their judgments instead of fusing with them. When you see your story as a story, you get the option to edit it. Here's a line you can use as a pattern breaker: "Those are my thoughts, not the full truth." You can say it out loud or in your head whenever you catch yourself spiraling. It doesn't force you into fake positivity. It just reminds you that your brain is offering one angle, not a courtroom verdict on your worth. Imagine a guy in Vancouver who just watched someone drift away after a promising start. He notices his internal monologue becoming harsh: "Of course she lost interest, you always mess this up." Instead of swallowing that whole, he writes down 3 columns in a notebook: facts, story, and alternative story. Under facts, he puts only what actually happened. Under the story, he lists his current narrative. Under alternative stories, he writes something more grounded like, "She might not be ready for the kind of connection I want," or "We weren't the match I hoped for, but that doesn't cancel my value." This doesn't magically erase the hurt, but it keeps him from building a self-image based entirely on worst-case conclusions. Your tiny action today is to choose one current situation, romantic or otherwise, where you feel someone pulling away and write down 3 facts and 1 still realistic story. Keep it in your notes app or journal as proof that you can step outside the harshest version of your thoughts. At some point, you'll need to decide whether to keep the door open or to walk away. The claim here is that you set a clear internal limit on how much ambiguity you are willing to live with, and you honor it. This matters because drifting in almost connections for months drains emotional energy that could be invested in people who are actually available. This works because boundaries create relief. When you know, for example, that if you don't see consistent effort after your respectful re-invite within a certain timeframe, you will mentally release the situation, you no longer have to keep re-evaluating every day. You give the connection a fair chance without letting it become your whole emotional landscape. Stoic thinking encourages you to align actions with values. If you value mutual effort and clarity, your behavior needs to reflect that, even when it's uncomfortable. Here's a line you can adopt as your internal policy: "I match energy, I don't chase indifference." You repeat this when you're tempted to restart a dead conversation for the 10th time or when you find yourself making excuses for consistent flakiness. It doesn't mean you expect perfection, but it does mean you stop arguing with reality when someone shows you, repeatedly, that they are not meeting you halfway. Imagine a woman in Boston who has been in a situationship for nearly a year. The person she likes surfaces every few weeks, gives just enough attention to keep hope alive, then disappears again. After learning these tools, she sets a firm internal limit: if there isn't a real plan to see each other in consistent communication over the next month, she will emotionally step back and stop engaging. She communicates her desire for something more consistent once, clearly and kindly, then watches what happens. The pattern doesn't change. Instead of staying another year in limbo, she keeps her word to herself and disengages with grace. It hurts, but there's a deep sense of alignment underneath the sadness. Your tiny action today is to define one clear limit for yourself regarding inconsistent interest. It could be a time limit: if effort doesn't improve within X weeks, I let go, or a behavior threshold: if I'm the only one who initiates for X number of interactions, I stop initiating. Write it down and treat it as a promise to yourself, not a threat to anyone else. Let's pull these pieces together in a real lifestyle scenario from North America. Meet Aaron, a 32-year-old software developer in Minneapolis. He met Maya through mutual friends at a weekend barbecue. They hit it off quickly: banter, shared interests, easy chemistry. Over the next month, they went on 4 dates. Texting was light but steady, and he started to picture a longer-term possibility. Then, slowly, things changed. Her responses came later. She stopped suggesting plans. 2 of their dates in a row were cancelled last minute with vague reasons. The old version of Aaron would have responded by ramping up effort. He would have sent a long message asking what went wrong, maybe bought surprise concert tickets, maybe even apologized for things he didn't understand just to fix the discomfort. His anxiety would have gone through the roof, and the connection would likely have collapsed under the pressure. This time, he notices the shift and feels the familiar sting, but he remembers his stillness window. He quietly decides on 72 hours of no initiation. During those 3 days, he goes to work, keeps his gym sessions, and has dinner with a friend. He still thinks about Maya, but he doesn't let those thoughts steer his actions. After the stillness window, he checks in with his frame. He asks whether he's been living his standards, showing up at work, staying honest, keeping commitments to himself. He realizes that, aside from some overthinking, he's been on track. From that grounded place, he decides he would genuinely like to see her again, not from panic but from preference. So he uses his pre-written line, "Hey, I've noticed our chats have been quieter lately. I've enjoyed getting to know you. If you're still interested, I'm up for meeting again sometime next week." He sends it on a Sunday afternoon. Then he does something crucial. He respects space. He doesn't stare at his phone or reopen the chat every 5 minutes. He doesn't send follow-ups. He already has a replacement plan in place, a pickup basketball game that evening, meal prep for the week, and an hour working on a small app idea. The next day, Maya replies. She thanks him for the message and admits she's been talking to someone else more seriously and doesn't want to juggle both. She says she enjoyed their time but doesn't see it continuing. In that moment, the old script tries to fire in his head, "You weren't enough." But Aaron remembers the distinction between facts and stories. The facts are that he met someone he liked, they had a few good dates, and then she chose a different direction. The story that he's unworthy is optional. He repeats his internal line, "Her interest can rise or fall, my standard stays the same." He sends a brief, kind response wishing her well, then lets the thread end. Over the next weeks, the sting fades, and he notices something new. He's not ashamed of how he handled it. He didn't beg, he didn't rage, he didn't vanish into workaholism. He acted in line with his values, kept his life moving, and allowed another person to make her choice without abandoning himself. What you've just walked through is not a trick to keep anyone from ever leaving. It's a way to stay steady when someone steps back, so you don't hand them the keys to your emotional life. When interest drops, you pause instead of chase, you return your attention to what's in your control, you make one clean invitation instead of an endless campaign, and you respect the answer, spoken or unspoken, while continuing to take care of yourself. You began by learning the value of a stillness window, giving your nervous system time to calm before you act. You then rebuilt your inner frame so that someone else's level of interest stopped being the main measure of your worth. From there, you learned a single respectful re-invite you can send when you genuinely want to see whether there is still a path forward. You practiced respecting space after that message instead of trying to force clarity, and you designed a self-care replacement plan so your schedule doesn't become an empty waiting room for texts. You also trained your mind to separate facts from harsh stories and set clear internal limits around how much ambiguity you are willing to live with. Finally, you saw how all of this looks when a real person, in a real North American city, actually applies it. Now it's time to put a few things into action. First, choose your default stillness window and write it somewhere you will see it, so that when anxiety hits, the decision is already made. Second, craft your own version of the respectful re-invite message and save it in your phone, ready for the day you might need it. Third, design a simple distance routine for yourself that includes one physical activity, one social connection, and one personal project you can lean on anytime you feel someone pulling away. Do these 3 things, and you won't just feel better about dating, you'll feel better about how you show up as a person. When you're ready to go deeper, the next topic to explore is emotional self-sufficiency in dating, how to build a life so full and grounded that no single connection, no matter how promising, can make or break you. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next lesson.